I now call George Adam to be followed by Anne McTaggart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of my colleagues just said, follow that. I don't think I will. I'll try and do what I'm good at myself. And I may mention the town of Paisley at one point during the report, because I welcome this report and all the hard work that the committee obviously did during this, because my time with dealing with things like regeneration, I think Stuart Stevenson is correct when he says when we use words like regeneration, we're actually taking it away from the very people who want to just get the job done. And it's just a case of getting the sleeves up and doing the work, the hard work as well. And I think that was a valid point he made, because when I first got involved, it was as a councillor in Renfrewshire Council. And one of the things we noticed with the community planning partnership programme was when you had the engagement with a lot of the groups, you actually seen all their good ideas and what they wanted. And I found that extremely that gave me the reason for what we wanted to do and what we wanted to provide. And one of the first things that we did was ensure as administration in Renfrewshire Council was to create the local area committee structure where there was voting for community groups to actually make a decision what we did with the Paisley Common Good Fund and various other funds that were available to these groups, so that they had a say in it, instead of what had happened in the past, where in a darkened council room, councillors decided what they were actually going to do with the money. And I think that was more open, it was a better way forward. And I found it a lot better as well, because it made sure that I was actually, as the convener of that group, making sure that the public were getting what they wanted. And things were successful. Some of the things we did was we made sure we got investment of £220,000 in tennis courts from Tennis Scotland in the south end of Paisley. People thought I was daft, thought I wasn't going to get the money, but I got the money because we thought big and we decided to get it in that small area of Paisley. And we also looked at getting things like an outdoor gym, which I went by the other day, and it's extremely successful. The whole idea was to make sure that you had intergenerational movement and people not sitting there walking down the park being scared of younger people and older people. Everybody was there together, and that worked. These were all things that came from the public, and then the local authority actually went on with it. But one of the ongoing issues, one of the issues we constantly heard, and I heard during my time as a councillor on the scrutiny board, when we looked at various funding streams that we could do for projects, was that there was an ongoing, and it says it in this report, about building capacity in areas like mine and constituencies like mine for larger projects, because you have a lot of good smaller projects going on, but the bigger, larger, life-changing type projects are more difficult because people shy away from it because they don't believe that they have the capacity to push forward with that. And I don't think that's true, because I think it's just a case of thinking positively and thinking differently, ensuring that you give these people the opportunity, these groups, use every single bit of passion that they have for their local town and their local area to good effect. And one of the things I can say was the Paisley Development Trust came to me regarding they wanted to get a building in the area so that they could, one of the older buildings that was empty. At that time, the Russell Institute was being left by the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and I said, why don't we go for that building? Why don't we go towards 2 years later, working with the local authority and other partners? That building is going, and the Scottish Government, that building is going to actually be back being used again in the town. And that's a case of, that came from that group, that came from the bottom up. They wanted to do something, but they engaged with the local politicians. Local politicians worked together of various party colour, and we managed to deliver something there. So that just shows you the difference that we can make when we do all focus and start to work together. But during the investigation, the committee obviously went to the centre of the universe during their deliberations and were in Paisley. While they were in Paisley, they spoke to community activists from Fergusley Park, and they went to the home of the famous Paisley St Mirren. And St Mirren are a perfect example of a community anchor organisation, because the report mentions that as well. And with some of the work that they have done over the years, and I think they mentioned it to the committee when they were there, was that they've worked with the local authority and various other local businesses to deliver the St Mirren Street stuff, which is, I've mentioned it before, Presiding Officer. They go out into areas where there's been problems with young people, and they actually engage with them, play street football. There's a youth gym, there's a gym in the bus. There's all these kinds of things, and it's brought down youth disorder in some areas by 25%. Now, the report actually mentions on page 66 that the fact when they went to St Mirren, they said how they use an open door policy. They open the club, they make the club. Lots of football clubs talk about being a community club, but St Mirren actually open the door to the public because they know that is the future for them, and they are a community community asset. The only problem with some of the things that they are doing is that it's a basket of funding measures and it's done on a yearly basis. But when I was talking, Mark MacDonald said earlier on that people end up thinking regeneration is something the council does or something that the government does. And I think he's right when you say it's bigger than that, because St Mirren Chairman Stuart Gilmour said jokingly to the Chief Executive of Renfrewshire Council, why don't you second some of your social workers to St Mirren and I'll help you with help you with some of the problems you have. Now, that may sound like a silly idea initially, but it's valid because when you look at the other projects they've done, they have the credibility and they're not looked upon by the members of the public as the enemy, effectively. And they can engage with them as the same people that are doing the job, but they're coming in not as the council to actually discuss from an enforcement point of view. They're coming there as someone who's there to help you, and they've got the credibility and the engagement. So one of the things that we looked at, working with other organisations, I was on Mr McNeill's Health and Sport Committee for all of 2 meetings, and they were talking about sports hubs, and they talked about the European model, how we could actually do, all the clubs played multiple sports and everybody went into their professional clubs area, and it made such a difference to the area. So I had discussions with Kelburn Hockey Club, our local hockey team, St Mirren FC, Renfrewshire Council, Renfrewshire Leisure Trust, UWS and the West College Scotland, and engaged Renfrewshire, the third sector interface, and the Scottish Government ministers, and we talked about how can we make this happen in Paisley? How can we take that idea? And when we discussed with the National Lottery, in an area like Fergusley, where St Mirren Park is, you're in an area of multiple deprivation. And like Mr Stevenson says, someone that's born in Fergusley doesn't grow up believing that they live in an area of multiple deprivation. They live in Fergusley and they just want to get on with their life. We want to make sure that they can get that access. And the ideas that we had with this idea was to eventually get to a stage that they could get the access to education. It's not about elite football stars. It's about using that capital spend, that regeneration, and trying to make a difference in areas like Fergusley Park. And that's the project that we are currently working on now. All we're short, Presiding Officer, is the money, but we're looking for about a 4 or 5 year programme with the National Lottery that can make a difference in a place like Fergusley Park. And as Mr Stevenson quite rightly said, and the report says, it's about galvanising, getting the support from your local community, giving them what they want and ensuring that you can make a difference in their lives.
Many thanks.